Time does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, not from the skies, but through faded pages, fractured visions, and forgotten warnings. Beneath the dust of centuries, two names endure, not just as prophets, but as haunted messengers of a future too dark to name. Nostradamus, the mystic of Renaissance France. Baba Vanga, the blind seer of the Balkans. They never met, never spoke. Yet across time and continents, they both pointed to one chilling date, 2025. What did they see? What did they fear? Not a single event, but a convergence, a crumbling of power, a crack in the veil between what we know and what we refuse to face. They warned of fire, war, betrayal from popes to kings, from the east to the west. A year when silence breaks and the earth itself may rebel. Some say it's coincidence, others pattern. But if their visions were madness, why do they echo louder with every passing headline? Tonight, we don't seek answers. We seek the echo, the ripple in time both foresaw but neither survived to explain. So if you're drawn to the hidden, the forbidden, and the truths too strange to ignore, like this video and subscribe to step deeper into the shadows with us. Because the question isn't, is it true? The question is, what if it's already begun? In the dim candlelight of 16th century France, a man sat alone, surrounded not by people, but by symbols, astrology charts, herbal scrolls, decaying manuscripts, and the stars above him. His name was Michel de Nostradamus, known to us as Nostradamus, a man both revered and reviled. To some, he was a physician who saved lives from plague. To others, a mystic whose dreams blurred the line between science and sorcery. But to history, he became something else entirely. A mirror reflecting futures, not yet lived. He didn't write clearly. He couldn't. Instead, he encoded his visions into quatrains, four-line verses that danced with metaphor and murk. Perhaps it was to protect himself. Perhaps it was to protect us, because what he saw was not meant for an unready world. Many scoffed, many still do, but history has an unsettling habit of catching up to prophecy. He wrote of a great fire in 66. A century later, in 1666, London burned, its heart reduced to cinder. He described two eagles clashing beneath blood-colored skies. Historians later saw this in the rise of Nazi Germany, the eagle its symbol, the war its blood. He warned of two great wars, and they came. Of a young king cut down, echoed in the assassination of JFK, and of nuclear fire over the East, eerily resonant with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Even modern pandemics seem to echo his spectral lines. Still, skeptics argue, these predictions are too vague, too flexible. But that's the danger of mirrors. They don't show the future with precision. They reflect possibilities, distorted, refracted, but real enough to stir the soul. And then came 2022. In a little-known book titled Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies for the Future, author Mario Reading predicted, based on Nostradamus's quatrains, that Queen Elizabeth II would die at the age of 96. Around that year, she did. That exact age, that exact time. But what did Nostradamus see? Why did he fear that year more than others? To understand that we must follow the threads of power and witness the cracks forming in the pillars of our modern world. Prophets don't always speak of storms and fire. Sometimes, their warnings concern something far more fragile: authority, symbols, thrones. Among Nostradamus' more chilling passages lies one that has gained renewed attention in recent years. He wrote, "The very old pontiff shall pass away. A middle-aged Roman shall be chosen in his place. People will say, he weakened the papal seat, yet he shall reign long with patience and silence." For centuries, the verse remained buried in metaphor, obscure, unprovable. But now the lines feel different. Pope Francis, born in 1936, is well into his 80s and visibly slowing. His health increasingly frail. His public appearances often brief. He is, by all standards, the very old pontiff. Because this isn't just about a man. It's about the papal seat, a symbol of spiritual continuity. And when symbols shake, so too does the world around them. But prophecy doesn't end at the Vatican. Nostradamus also turned his gaze to the British Isles. The king of the Isles shall be cast down by an outside force. The successor shall be one who bears no mark of kingship. First, poetic nonsense. Until reality began to echo. In early 2024, King Charles III was diagnosed with cancer. A revelation that stirred unease across the UK. For a man who waited a lifetime to reign, his time on the throne suddenly felt conditional, finite. And then came a haunting theory. Author Mario Reading, long before Charles ascended, interpreted the successor with no mark of kingship as Prince Harry, the man who abandoned his titles, turned his back on royal protocol, and now lives oceans away, estranged yet still of royal blood. Could the monarchy truly bend that far? Could chaos or scandal upend centuries of tradition? We don't know, but we do feel it. The trembling, the slow unraveling of long-standing institutions. The church, the crown, power itself, once unquestioned, now teeters. And this is what makes 2025 feel ominous. Not because fire rains from the sky, but because the structures we've always trusted are beginning to crack from within. And when thrones tremble, war often follows. Prophecies rarely speak plainly of war. They whisper of colors, of climates, of rising tides and unnamed enemies. Nostradamus was no different. One of his more debated verses reads, "The red enemy shall grow pale with fear as the ocean roars like thunder." For years, scholars argued its meaning. Was it a metaphor for collapse or something literal? Now, in the growing tensions of the South China Sea, the meaning feels disturbingly literal. The red enemy. To many, that points directly to China, a nation whose identity, flag, and revolutionary history are steeped in the color red, once symbolic, now strategic. And what of the roaring ocean? Look east, where territorial disputes, war games, and geopolitical sabers rattle louder with each passing month. Taiwan, a small island with global consequence, sits in the center of this storm. China claims it, the West defends it, and in between only a few hundred miles of water and fragile diplomacy. Artificial islands rise from the sea. Warships drift closer. Jets trace invisible lines that neither side dares cross. And yet all it would take is one mistake. But Nostradamus wasn't simply predicting conflict. He was pointing to where it begins. We often imagine the world's next war starting in Europe, in the shadow of old alliances and Cold Wars reborn. But this prophecy turns our gaze toward Asia and to waters long underestimated. And the timing? As military analysts grow louder, the calendar grows shorter. 2025 approaches, and with it, an alignment of pressure. Points too close for comfort. The United States, in response, is moving assets eastward. Aircraft carriers, submarines, intelligence networks, all shifting focus from the old enemies to the new flashpoints. Japan and Australia increase defense budgets. India redefines its alliances. Lines are being drawn, not in sand, but in surf. And beyond the military maneuvers lies something older, more unsettling. The Book of Revelation's red horse, symbol of war, riding once again. Red, war, fear. We cannot say if Nostradamus truly saw a third world war, but we can say this: his words are no longer historical curiosities. They are headlines waiting for timestamps. And if war is the symptom, could the disease be something or someone else? Some names in prophecy are cloaked in mystery. Others are cloaked in fear. And few inspire more unease than the one Nostradamus called the Third Antichrist. In his cryptic writings, he warned of not one, but three. Each would rise with charm, ambition, and devastation at their heels. The first, he claimed, was Napoleon, a man who emerged from revolution, restructured Europe, and left battlefields soaked in blood. The second, almost universally recognized, was Adolf Hitler, whose rise from failed artist to tyrant unleashed horrors that scarred the 20th century. But the third remains unnamed, and that's what makes him dangerous. Nostradamus wrote that this Antichrist would come from the east, but be known to the west. He would not lead armies, at least not at first. He would not conquer with force, but with influence. The false savior shall rise under the sign of peace and bring war, hidden behind a smiling mask. This third figure, he warned, would seduce rather than seize. He would rise through charisma, wealth, and technology, a manipulator of minds, not men. And the world, distracted and divided, would welcome him. Speculation runs rampant. Some have pointed to political leaders, others to billionaire technocrats. A few whisper about AI, a non-human mind born of our own ambition, quietly gathering control. But maybe that's the point. The third Antichrist won't look like a villain. He won't arrive with banners or bombs. He'll arrive with solutions. He will speak of progress, of security, of unity, and only later, much later, will we realize the price. Because in a world already addicted to surveillance, misinformation, and power cloaked as convenience, what better battlefield than our own minds? And isn't that the final evolution of tyranny? Not conquest, but consent? Nostradamus never gave a name, no face, only a warning that the most dangerous enemy is the one we ask to lead us. So now we're left asking, have we seen this figure already? Is he in power now? Or is he still waiting in the wings of history, rehearsing his smile? Because if the third Antichrist is real, he will not arrive in fire, but in silence, in systems, in trust. And by the time we know it's him, it will be too late. Not all prophecies warn of men. Some speak of something far older, far more patient, and far more unforgiving. Nature. Nostradamus once wrote, "A great wave bringing famine and death shall sweep across the shore. The sun shall burn hotter. The ground shall crack. The winds shall rage as never before." For centuries, these words were taken as allegory, ancient poetry, apocalyptic metaphor, until they weren't, because the earth doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. It groans, tightens the wind. It pulls the oceans higher until they forget where land begins. And if you've been listening, you know the warnings have already arrived. Floodwaters swallowing cities in Asia, wildfires in Europe turning olive groves to ash, hailstorms in Spain pounding rooftops with ice the size of apples, Florida's coastlines slowly drowning in silence. And in Ethiopia, farmers no longer pray for rain. They mourn its absence. In April 2024, a powerful earthquake rocked Myanmar, reducing entire districts to rubble in seconds. Sudden, merciless, aligned all too eerily with the trembling ground foretold in ancient verses. These are not omens. These are headlines. And yet the world still wonders if it's prophecy or just a chain of coincidences we refuse to connect. Scientists speak of climate collapse, of rising temperatures, shifting jet streams, melting ice. But Nostradamus spoke of something deeper. Nature rising not as a system, but as a force betrayed. And the betrayal has been long. Centuries of industry, greed dressed as growth, the silence of inaction. And now the planet whispers no more. It screams. Some interpret these warnings as judgment, others as cycles. But all agree on one thing: the window is closing. As crops fail and coastlines retreat, as superstorms redraw maps, the world begins to realize that the future isn't something distant. It's weather, it's water, it's tomorrow's food supply, and it's coming undone. But Nostradamus was not the only one who saw it. On another continent, in another language, a woman who had never seen the sun also saw the storms, and she too named 2025. She never saw the world with her eyes, yet she described it with a clarity few ever could. Baba Vanga, the blind mystic of Bulgaria, lost her sight at age 12 in a violent storm. But in losing one kind of vision, she claimed to gain another. She spoke of it not as a single event, but as a turning point. A year when multiple crises, economic, cosmic, technological, collide. Money will lose its crown, she warned, and the East shall rise while the West forgets its name. Today, global debt teeters at unsustainable levels. Nations struggle beneath inflation. Currencies lose value not because of collapse, but because of confidence. And confidence is already cracking. Meanwhile, Asia rises not just in economics but in influence. China, India, and regional alliances now shape diplomacy in ways the old powers can no longer control. But that was only the beginning. Vanga also foresaw an orbital shift, not symbolic but literal. A slight change in Earth's alignment that would distort weather in ways we'd never seen. Strange storms that will defy all memory, she said. And now, snow in deserts, heat waves in the Arctic, cyclones where no cyclones should be. Her vision once sounded like science fiction. Now it sounds like the forecast. And still, her prophecies weren't all bleak. Vanga also spoke of breakthroughs, a treatment for cancer, a step forward in curing Alzheimer's, a whisper of healing amid the chaos. Strangely, 2025 is the year scientists in Russia and Israel claim they may begin human trials on revolutionary anti-cancer vaccines. Coincidence? Perhaps. But her timeline, once laughable, is now eerily aligned with headlines. She even foresaw the rise of artificial intelligence, not as a destroyer but as a divider. A tool with power to unite or to deepen our fractures, depending on who controls it. And that may be the most important echo of all. The future is not fixed. It is fragile. And prophecy is not always prediction, sometimes it's permission, a warning disguised as possibility. So now we must ask, what if the visions were never meant to scare us, but to prepare us? So what are we left with? Two voices, one from a candlelit chamber in France, another from a storm-swept village in Bulgaria, separated by centuries, yet somehow both pointing to the same shadowed year, 2025. But prophecy rarely gives answers. It gives questions, wrapped in metaphor, possibilities, not certainties. Their visions weren't identical, but they converged on war, collapse, awakening, and choice. And that's what matters most. Because if they were right, then the path we're on is already unfolding. And if they were wrong, then perhaps it's even more dangerous because we are still heading toward the edge, but without the warning, signs to guide us. So the question isn't whether prophecy is real. The question is whether we're listening before the headlines become history. If the story stirred something in you, an unease, a question, or simply curiosity, like the video and subscribe to this channel, because more stories are waiting, and some truths are only whispered until it's too late to hear them.